everyone. My name is Lerica. I'm organizer of Flash Game Conference, which this year is a part of Casual Connect. This is the conference in Eastern Europe, in Kiev and Moscow, which we organize twice a year, and it's devoted to Flash, social, mobile games, which are mostly indies. This conference started in 2008, and now it's more than 800 participants every conference. And this year, first time, we made it during Casual Connect. And with the help of Casual Connect, we organized Innovation Scholarship for best indie developers from Eastern Europe who came here to Indie Showcase, and also they will represent their games during Indie Postmortems here in this hall. So you're welcome to visit it. And in the end of the day, we'll also have a really cool discussion panel, which calls Game Lynch. Experts from game industry will lynch the games. What's wrong with that games? What's cool with that games? So it will be a really cool and funny panel. I really recommend it. So you're welcome to visit our events in Kiev and Moscow as well during this year. They're really cool. It's not so business as Casual Connect. It's mostly about indie games and not just about Flash games. So, and now I would like to represent our first speaker, Tom KRCHA. He's gaming evangelist from Adobe System, and he will tell us about new gaming Adobe SDK and what is new about 2D games and 3D games. Yeah? Let's welcome him.
Thank you so much for introduction, Ulrika. It's amazing. And I have to say, when I look at this chart, I've been actually speaking at 2008, 2009, and 2010 conferences. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm so happy to see Flash Game extending to Hamburg as well. So that's great to see. All right. My session is called Adobe Gaming SDK, or Powering Games with Adobe Gaming SDK. I'm working out of San Francisco office, so it's a pleasure to be here in Hamburg to talk about what we are doing at Adobe to help you guys build better games, build them more easily and faster. If you want, you can get in touch with me on Twitter and Facebook as well, and I'm also writing a blog at gamingnotes.com. And let's kick it off. So first, let me extend the warm welcome to the largest audience in gaming. So basically, we think this is a huge milestone in gaming because Flash is basically one of the biggest platforms for delivering online games. And there are several things that are making this possible. So one of the first and big things is that currently we have Flash probably installed on 1.3 billion computers around the world. And that's pretty big. And there are three things that are quite important to say. So first of all, we provide rich capabilities for you. So if you are, oops, what happened? Yeah, nothing, cool. So there are three things that are quite important to that. So first of all, rich capabilities we provide for you as game developers. So basically everything you need to build your games online. Also, very critically, we provide you reach, as I mentioned before, 1.3 billion people plus devices. It's pretty big, and also consistency. This is also quite important fact because once you build your game, it actually works in most of the browsers, basically same, and that's quite a big deal. Also, Flash Player is actually providing you access to audience which is 20 times bigger than the audience you can target with Xbox. And also, you can target another 500 million iOS and Android devices with Adobe AIR, which basically takes your Flash game and cross-compiles game on iOS to native, and on Android, it actually runs inside Adobe AIR runtime. So when we look at it, on this slide, we can see that with no install, you can reach Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, and also Mac, Windows, and also Windows 8, IE 10. modern UI, and also another 500 million devices or even more with Android and iOS. Another important fact is that basically most of the games on Facebook are built with Flash. So 96% of games on Facebook are built with Flash. So we can basically say that Facebook equals Flash, in terms of gaming, and that's quite nice. And also, plus the top browser games across the web on portals like Congregate or Miniclip and so on. Another quite big thing in terms of Flash is that we have upgraded Flash with auto install. So this is something that happens silently on the background, and in 48 hours we can upgrade Flash Player to a new version. And we're listening a lot to developers, and we are implementing a lot of what we call GDIs, just do it features. So developers usually ask us to implement something here and there, like mouse lock, and so on. And the good thing about that is that we listen to you, we implement this, and we can update the Flash Player in 48 hours once we have a new version implemented. And that's quite a nice thing. And this is basically 6 times more people than Xbox 360 sold in last 7 years. Recently, like in 2010, we have announced a new feature which is called Stage 3D, and it basically takes your games to the GPU. So if you're using some of the frameworks that are running on top of Stage 3D, you can reach GPU and you can have your game running 60 frames per second very fluently, very seamlessly, like a native game. And this basically means 1,000 times faster 2D and 3D rendering, cinematic fluid 60 frames per second graphics across desktop browsers, iOS and Android. And this full GPU acceleration, we can take up to 85% of all connected PCs that are using Flash Player. And that's quite a huge thing, because when we first started with Stage 3D in 2010 and 2011, when we actually launched Stage 3D, it was around 50-60% reach with GPU acceleration. But in the recent versions, we actually did some extensions to Stage 3D, and right now you can actually access even low-end devices, like devices that are running using Intel GMA integrated cards and so on. So for us to help you guys reach most of the audience that is actually running Flash Player with GPU acceleration is quite a big thing. You can also take your game to Mac App Store with Adobe AIR and Captive Runtime. So since AIR free Plus, you can actually compile your game for Mac App Store and run it inside Mac App Store. This slide is actually featuring one of the famous games from Amanita Design, the authors of Machinarium, called Botanicula. You can check it out on App Store. It was featured by Apple. And so let me show you some of the demos. But last thing I wanted to mention about these app stores, you can also take your Flash game and actually run it sell it inside Steam, which is also quite interesting, I would say, distribution platform. All right, so let me show you some of the demos, and then we will move to Adobe Gaming SDK, what we actually offer to you as a developers, and we'll go through that. So one of the first demos I want to show you is this spool. It is built with Away3D. One of the main guys who is actually behind Away3D, Rob Bateman, is having a session on Friday, I guess, here. So definitely check it out. And you can see I can point this there, and basically it works. So it's a nice game. I like it. If you want to check it out, you can just go to away3d.com/showcase, and you can see some of the latest games built using Away3D over there, and basically play it. I don't know why it's so slow, but definitely check it out, away3d.com/showcase. One of the other games I wanted to show you is Monster Trucks 360, also indie game with 2D physics. Also the pool that you saw before is using Box 2D for physics. And I think this game is also using Box 2D for physics. So it's a 3D game that is using 2D physics engine. It's a quite nice idea to get good performance and basically get the most out of the... Woo! Cool. I like it. So, monster trucks. I don't know how many of you guys have seen this demo. It's basically a demo that is cross-compiled from C++ to Flash using technology what we call Flask. And I'll talk about it just in a moment. So this is a demo from Epic. Epic is a company, Epic Games is a company in the US that is building Unreal Engine 3 and recently Unreal Engine 4. And this is basically built with Unreal Engine, and you can see it's running inside Flash. Let me see if I can actually resize it. You can walk around. And my mouse kind of still working, but so how many of you guys know Unreal Engine? I guess everybody. Have you guys seen this demo before? Awesome. So if you want to check it out, it's at unrealengine.com/flash. You want to play through the game and see how it actually works. Okey-doke. So now let me tell you a little bit about Adobe Gaming SDK. So we're providing you some of the tools that actually ease the development of Flash games. So first of all, something we have launched recently is called Adobe Gaming SDK. And Adobe Gaming SDK helps you create things. So it's composed of several libraries, and it's really easy to pick up and install and start building your games today. The other technology we provide you is Flask, which is Flash C++ compiler or C++ compiler. So basically you can build your native game in OpenGL and then bind your game to Flash. So this is the technology behind Unreal SDK or Unity and so on. Unity exporter to Flash. So this is quite interesting as well for you if you are developing native games for iOS, Android and so on to actually reach even bigger audience through Flash. You might want to check it out. And the last one is Adobe Scout, which is a new profiling tool for Flash games, which actually unlocks the Flash games and helps you look inside what is happening inside the black box, you know. And that's quite important because what we hear from our customers is that they looked inside their games using Adobe Scout profiler, and they found out bottlenecks and actually optimized their games by more than 50%, you know, which is kind of nice. So why are we doing this? Because it is hard to get started today. And when we look at what you have to do or what you had to do before a gaming SDK to actually start building your Flash game, it was quite a nightmare. There was a huge friction. So first you basically downloaded the tools, you know, then you downloaded the libraries, then you created a new project and so on, you know, and it basically took 18 steps, you know, and after 18 steps, you finally compiled an empty Swift. Wow, that's great, you know, 18 steps, oh my God. So after 1 hour, you had empty Swift compiled. Beautiful. So with Gaming SDK, we are looking at simplifying this whole workflow, and from 18 steps, we got to just 3. So first of all, you download some IDE like Flash Builder or Flash Develop or IntelliJ IDEA. Then you open a sample provided with the Gaming SDK, and you compile and test. Boom, it's there. It just works. It's easy as that. So how does it look like? So when we look at a Gaming SDK, there are several tools that are provided to you. So first of all, there is AIR SDK, which helps you to compile your games for Flash and also for iOS and Android. Then you have some frameworks available, like Starlink, MA3D, and so on. There are some extensions, native iOS and Android extensions, that help you implement things like in-app purchase and so on. And there's also documentation, so you have immediate offline access to documentation for all the frameworks. And there are also some ATF tools, which is Adobe Texture Format, which basically takes your JPEG or PNG files and compiles them into ATF. And ATF is basically compressed texture for GPU. And everything is free, which is nice. So in terms of SDK, so there is AIR SDK 3.5. We have AV3D, Starlink, and Feathers UI framework available as a part of the SDK. There are also some extensions like Game Center, Product Store, Social extension, Stage Ad, and some extension for beta testing. And also docs. So in terms of docs, you have access to resources, ATF documentation, A&E documentation, code samples, Starlink and Wave3D, Feathers UI documentation, and so on. So basically all you need for building games with frameworks that are included. And finally, ATF, as I mentioned before, which are basically command line tools that helps you compress your textures so they don't consume that much memory on the GPU. And this all is packaged or zipped inside one package. So there are two packages, either for Windows or Mac. You pick the one you need and you basically install it. This is how it looks like when it's on the disk. So you have Gaming SDK, there you have all the folders you need. It's nicely structured, easy to understand, easy to start with. And if you actually start downloading the Gaming SDK, this is also the documentation that is provided with the SDK, and you can see which part means what, so kind of helps you to get organized inside the SDK. And there is also Get Started page and some notes about profiling and so on. And there is also a link to Starlink book, which is a free ebook provided to you for Starlink framework. So Starlink framework is an open source 2D framework for building stage 3D games. It helps you to get started building 2D games on the GPU, and it is very similar to Flash Display List. So if you want to create a new sprite on the GPU, you just create new sprite, you position it, you add event listener for loop, and that's it. So if you look at the code, it's basically same as the display list. There is no difference from display list, but there is a huge difference in terms of performance. This thing runs like a beast on the GPU, 60 frames per second. Nothing is stopping it, which is great. If you want to start with Starlink, there are free ebooks available at O'Reilly. Just look it up at the internet and check it out. The other framework that is provided is called Feathers, or Feathers UI. It's a UI framework which is actually built, it's sitting on top of Starlink, and it's super lightweight. It has several components like sliders, list component, buttons, checkboxes, and so on. And it's very small, very fast. It's great, and you can actually combine it with Starlink. So if you build your game with Starlink, you can then put your UI on top of the Starlink game, which is nice. It's also running on GPU. Then AV3D, that's a 3D framework provided also with Adobe Gaming SDK. It's also a very lightweight framework, and there's a huge community that is contributing to the framework, and there are a lot of projects that are actually using even historically AV3D and also starting to use it right now. So when we look at a stack, we have Feathers UI, AV3D, and Starlink. And you can actually combine these three elements together, so you can build a game that is partially 3D and also 2D, and then you can also put the UI on top of it, which is quite nice. And it's all open source. There's a free, vibrant community, and it's just beautiful. So check it out. The other element that is part of the whole Adobe Gaming SDK bunch or Adobe Gaming Tools is Flash C++ compiler, and as I showed you at the beginning, Unreal Demo is actually using this technology to cross-compile from C++ to Flash. There are actually a bunch of demos that you can look it up on the gaming.adobe.com website, and you can find out how to use C++ together with Flash and how to bind OpenGL to Stage 3D and so on. So there are also some tutorials included within the SDK, so you can find out more information out there. What actually happens here is that you have C++ and low-level virtual machine, and using GCC compiler, it is compiled into LLVM bitcode and then to AS3 bytecode, which is .abc file. And you can either build a library or you can compile a SWIF. So you recompile SWIC or SWIF. So you can just take, for instance, Box2D and compile it with Flask, and basically get Box2D native running inside Flash, or you can take any other C++ library that you find out on the internet and just cross-compile it to Flash. What's really cool about this technology is that it's also provided to you free, and it's cool to start with. It's nice. So this is what I told you about before. This is the compilation process. This is what happens when you actually unpack the Flask on your disk, so you can see documentation, samples, SDK, and there is also getting started page. You have samples provided to you, so it really helps you to get started with the Flask SDK very quickly. And finally, Adobe Scout. How many of you have tried Adobe Scout? How do you like it? Good? Awesome. So let me quickly show you what Scout means to you as a developer. So when I turn back here and I open Flash Builder and I open Adobe Scout, it's very small right now, but let me close that. I go to Flash Builder here and I go to Properties and I check Enable Detailed Telemetry here, and I hit OK. And when I launch the game, oops, sorry. Let me just launch it in a normal way, not in the debug player. Yeah, and actually we got some information here. For some reason, it didn't continue working well, but what is actually quite nice here is it's very small here right now. It's hard to see anything, but let me open Actionscript Panel, and here you can actually see some of the functions that were called, and you can also see how much time each function actually took in terms of processing, and it's very helpful for you to find bottlenecks. So you can basically select a bunch of frames throughout the gameplay or runtime of the game, and then profile in these frames altogether. And then also you can find, it's basically for finding bottlenecks, and that's one of the biggest things. And here you can also see, and you can check and uncheck different things here. So for instance, you just wanna see what happened in Stage 3D or what happened in built-in packages. So you just check it, uncheck it, and so on, and this helps you to track the problem and find out the bottleneck and then narrow it. So if you want to check it out, there are a lot of videos about Adobe Scout provided by Thibaut Imbert, product manager of Adobe Scout, and you can check his blog bytray.org and see more. What is also quite nice is that you can actually profile games that are running on iOS and Android. So if you compile your game using Adobe AIR, you can install it on an iPad or iPhone, and then just profile it using Wi-Fi connection. So what happens is that you run the game, it will initiate a connection using Wi-Fi, and it basically sends data to Scout. What is also really nice is that you can set up Scout to profile through network. And what it means is that you can have your game running on a different PC and profile on a different PC. You can also save reports out of Scout, which basically exports an HTML document, and you can send this HTML document to whoever else is responsible for the issue, you know. So even you as a boss of the company, or like the project manager, you can profile the games and like track the problems down. So it's not a tool that is intended just for developers. It's basically for everybody who is kind of involved in the game development process, and it's very easy to like start working with Scout and send it to people. So, and the feedback we get is just amazing. For everybody, for people who actually tried Scout and work on the games, it helped them to find most of the issues they had with game performance and narrow it, which is good. So this is all nice, but how do I get it? So Gaming SDK, Flask, and Adobe Scout, it's all part of Creative Cloud subscription, but right now it's free. So if you just go to this link, which is provided here, bit.ly/Gaming SDK, you can just log in using your Adobe ID, or you just register and you can get it. So this is what we provide right now. So it's Adobe Scout and Gaming SDK and Flash compiler are free. And there is currently a preview of Adobe Scout that is also provided free. And the other tools are available as a Creative Cloud subscription. Once you open the page, this is what you see. And you just hit the download button, get an SDK, and you can use it easily. So it's really easy to get. Some of you might have heard that Unity has export possibility to Flash as well. We are very excited about partnership with Unity, and this opens up the whole Flash ecosystem to more advanced 3D games. And Unity as a tool is a great free development tool. So this combination is quite nice and can bring quite nice 3D games online. So definitely check it out. The other quite nice engine is called Citrus. It's 2D and 3D engine sitting on top of Starlink and Away 3D, and it basically helps you to build mainly platformer games. This is the stack. So basically you can see there is Starlink and Away 3D that is sitting on top of Stage 3D, so the game is GPU accelerated, and then you can pick the physics of your choice. So for instance, Box 2D, Nape, or Away Physics, and then you can compile everything for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux, and so on. So this is Citrus. I'll do a quick demo of how Citrus actually works in just a minute. The other framework that is quite nice is Dragon Bones. This is for skeletal animation. So if your designer is using Flash Pro to design animations, Dragon Bones helps you to export animation out of Flash Pro to spreadsheets, and also it exports animation definition to XML, which is great, by the way, because the problem that happens with spreadsheets is that it's frame-by-frame animation, or frame-by-frame animation, the frames that you pick, you can still optimize that. And it's not smooth, you know. But with Dragon Bones, and this whole idea behind skeletal animation is that the animation is actually processed on the CPU in runtime, and the animation itself is very fast, very smooth. So Citrus has a built-in support for Dragon Bones, and Dragon Bones work nicely with Starlink framework. So let me show you how this workflow actually looks like. So let me switch to Flash Pro. So first of all, the nice thing about Citrus is that you can design your levels for your game inside Flash Pro. So you can position elements inside Flash Pro. Here you can see the whole level I have here. And if I zoom in, this is hero, this is coin, this is some trigger or sensor, this is enemy, and basically you have all these objects available here in the library. And if I want to add, for instance, another enemy, I just drag and drop it here, and I go to properties, and I just say like enemy 2. I can publish the level. It will just build the Swift file, and then I go to Flash Builder, and here I can see my level 2 Swift file that I actually load here in the code. Let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. So this is the main file of my game. I basically dynamically load the Swift file. Once I load it, I'll create new level 2 state, which is a class here, and here I just initiate physics, and using a class called ObjectMaker2D, I create a level from the Swift file. So that wouldn't be a big deal, but a big deal here is that it actually puts everything on GPU. It loads all the assets that are associated with the enemy, hero, coins, and platforms, and so on, and actually loads all the graphics inside and flushes everything to GPU. So if I launch the game, oops, just still in the debug mode, I have to kill this breakpoint. Okay. Okay, let me close this. Something wrong. My PC. Oh my god. Come on. Okay, how it works. So, as you can see, this hero is super smooth. The animation is like very smooth. It's running 60 frames per second almost. And that's because it's a skeletal animation using dragon bones, so I can just jump around, and really, I was able to design this level in a matter of minutes, you know. And if we look back here in a Flash CS6, we can see that, for instance, this is the coin, and this is the trigger. Let me just resize that. No, thanks. And here you can see all the parameters like offset X, offset Y, and so on. And if we actually pick hero, we can see all the different things defined for the hero. So you can set like friction, jump acceleration, jump height. So if I change, for instance, jump height to 20 and save the level, and now if I go back to Flash Builder, he'll be jumping super high, you know. So very simple workflow, easy to use. You just need Flash Pro, and you can start designing your levels right away. So right now, as you can see, I have Debug Physics turned on, but I can also turn it off. This is something which is defined here. Physics visible true. So if I just comment this out, you can see that there is no physics visible anymore. What I can do right now is also define the view for the platforms, and then the view will actually get rendered in the game. So this is using dragon bones. Let me just quickly show you how this works. If we go back here, here you can see I have defined the whole animation. So this is idle state, jump, which looks like that. As you can see, the hero is basically on the same position because the jump itself is actually defined by Citrus Engine and the jump height property. And then we have also walk animation defined here. So what happens next is that you install Skeletal Animation Design Panel, which looks like this. And if we go to library and actually pick all animations, movie clip, I can click import on selected items, hit OK. It will import all the animations here and actually build up the skeletal animation for me. And here you can see all the bones that are available. Always make sure that if you have animation that is composed of several different states like idle, walk, and run or jump, make sure that they are reusing the same assets. You know, like here, if we look back on the timeline, if you look back here on the timeline, we can basically see that all the elements are being reused through the whole animation, you know. So just make sure that you're reusing the same assets, you know, that the hand is only one hand, you know, that you don't have two different hands and so on. That way you ensure that it actually works quite nice. What we do next here is that we just hit export button, and here you can pick either like SWIFT, XML merged, or PNG, XML merged, which will basically encode XML file, which is the animation definition metadata file inside of Ping. And you can also do zip with XML and SWIFT and so on. I'm using PNG XML merged. Just hit OK. You can export it, and then if we look back here in Flash Builder, I can actually see hero output PNG here. And this is how it looks like, you know. So it exports only the elements that are used throughout the animation. Now, let me show you a quick difference between this and sprite sheets. It's quite huge. So this is the sprite sheet. You can see each frame is actually exported, and then you can use it throughout the animation. Now, when we look at the difference between these, I just uncomment this and comment my skeletal animation code. You can see the animation is quite glitchy, you know, compared to skeletal animation. It's still good, but you can feel the difference, you know, between 60 frames per second and 24. This is 24 frames per second. If you want to start building your games with Citrus Engine, just go to citrusengine.com. Hit download button. You can see the showcase of games built with Citrus. There are some quite nice games, and you can start building your games right away. And there are also tutorials provided, and I actually wrote some tutorials about using Flash Pro animations with Citrus and Dragon Bones, and also another article about designing a level with Flash Pro. What is also quite nice about Citrus, if you don't want to use Flash Pro, that's fine. There is a tool called Tiled Map Editor. If you want to build tiled-based game with Citrus, it's also possible, and it's also a nice way to go. Just check out Tiled Map Editor here, and basically this is how the tool looks like. You define your game here, you define the physics and everything, you know, using these drawing tools, and then just save the level as TMX file, and Citrus will do all the hard job, you know. So you just point to the TMX file and it will get imported. There is a tutorial on the website at citrusengine.com that helps you get started with that, so check it out. Okay, so I think I have like 5 minutes left, or 3 minutes left. So let me wrap it up. We are actually running a game jam at the end of the week on Friday here at Adobe Hamburg office. If you want, you're totally invited to join us. We have already around 70 people registered, and it will be a lot of fun. It's not an overnight event, but it starts on Friday at 3 p.m. at Adobe Hamburg, and it ends on Saturday the other day. So basically we'll be building games through around 24 hours, and the winner will get Creative Cloud membership. And the way it works is that if you have maximum team of 5, all of you guys will get Creative Cloud membership for 1 year. So if you want to register, go to Adobe Game Jam ham.eventbrite.com and check it out. And that's basically all I wanted to say. So thank you very much for coming today. There is my colleague here today with me from Adobe Japan, Andy Hall, and we will be here at the conference. So if you want to discuss things, you can find us. And if you have any questions, I am happy to answer. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone? Oh, okay.
Hey, so what's the performance difference like when you compare skeleton-based animations with sprite sheets?
That's a good question. So with Citrus, you have three options. You have dynamic sprite sheets, which will basically take Swift file and generate the sprite sheet itself on the fly. So you just point to a Swift file. Then you have static sprite sheet, which is pre-generated by Flash Pro. And then you have skeletal animation. And the difference is with sprite sheet, it's all pre-generated, so it's just changing the frames. So it's very fast, of course. So it's probably faster than skeletal animation.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have to upload each frame. So if you have bigger animations, you can run out of memory, especially on Retina devices, So there are pros and cons of both. So sometimes you want to use sprite sheet. On the other hand, sometimes you want to use skeletal animation because you can actually put way more animations inside skeletal animations because the rest is just metadata file that defines the animation itself. On the other hand, sprite sheet has to define all animation frame by frame, and you can easily run out of memory if you have like 10 different characters in your game.
Okay.
And you need like bigger bitmaps.
Thanks.
Hello, thank you. I would like to ask you, is it growing or reducing the audience of Flash compare previous years? Do you know the numbers?
That's a good question. I don't know what to answer, but I don't know.
No. But it's really, it's big, and I hope it will be always big.
Thank you.
Hello, Ralf Hester. Are there any popular titles on iOS and Android made by Flash?
Yes, absolutely. So let me just quickly show you. I think we have still several minutes left. Some of the games on iPad. So there are some of the games that were actually promoted by Apple recently. One of the games I want to show you, it's called Wonderput, and I hope this will actually start working at some point. You can always go to gaming.adobe.com, and there is a showcase where you can find more games built for iOS. So this game is super nice. It's built by Reese Millich out of UK, and this game was originally built for Congregate as a Flash game, and then he took the game and using AIR SDK, he compiled the game for iOS, and it actually got promoted all over Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And it was Game of the Week, so that's one of the games, Wonderput. Definitely check it out. It's a mini golf game. How many of you guys have seen this game before? Some of you. It was actually a nominee for IGF, Independent Games Festival. It won? Yeah. So that's Wonderput. The other quite popular title is Machinarium. I think most of you guys have probably played the game or saw the game before. It's built in Czech Republic, and you can definitely check it out on iOS. It was #1 game all over App Store for iPad. Okay, let me show you one level here that I really like. This is amazing level. You have to help this guy he tells you, hey, I need a joint, can you roll a joint for me? And you go here, you get toilet paper, and then you go here, you get this wheat or whatever it is, and then you change its size, you put a wheat on the lamp, so you dry it up, and then you just take it, you combine these two things together here and you just come to him and say like, hey, enjoy. And he gives you a hand, and you can use the hand here to actually, I think. So like that. So check it out. It's a fantastic game. I love it. If you actually use Stage 3D last demo. If you actually use Stage 3D on iOS, the performance is pretty nice. You can see it's like 60 frames per second, super fast, and so on. So check it out, gaming.adobe.com, and you can find out more and see what was built. Maybe this one will be the last. Okay. So this is a visualizer for Stage 3D, and so this is all rendered with Flash, so you can see that the performance is quite nice. Sorry. It's called Apex VJ, and it always wants you to restore your purchase, but it's cool. Check it out. Okay.
Thank you.